Too many things going on.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're good to
Randy,
start.
you still hearing us now?
I do, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna get started here. Okay, everybody, we're gonna get started. Hello, everybody, we're gonna get started. Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for being here. For the fellow board, roll call, we're gonna have everybody, it sounds like. We just have a few members that are late. So we'll take that at the end. Public comment, we're gonna hit the phones first because that's the protocol. But since you guys like to usually comment after you've heard whatever happened in the meeting today, we'll leave exactly 5 minutes for you guys at the end because we're not good at saving time at the end. So your comments are gonna have to be fast. Is that okay? Okay.
It shouldn't happen.
Well, then do it now. Would you like to have a comment now? Okay,
Definitely at the end.
let's go with whoever's on the phone.
All right. First one up is Brad Walker. You're unmuted.
Sorry, that's okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we have you, Brad.
Awesome. Good evening, Brad Walker, Town of Superior. It's been a little while since I've spoken with you folks. I apologize for that. I've had a lot going on. I wish I could be there tonight, so I really wish I could be there, but I'll give my comments verbally. At this week's meeting of the Airport Noise Roundtable, I wanted to bring up 3 items that I think should be brought to your attention. Number one, I've noticed a decreasing tone in the public comments, towards the community noise roundtable, and in particular, the profanity expressed towards Mr. Anslow. I think that that's unfair and unprofessional, and frankly, I put that squarely on the shoulders of some of the elected officials of that roundtable who have not done a very good job of educating their constituents. Number 2, at the Airport Community Noise Roundtable, there's a push to implement an app to monitor airplanes. I'm not certain that might be construed as a diversion of airport revenue and a grant assurance violation. The county or the airport would have to own that app, and any money expended towards an app would have to be substantially and operatively related to airport operations. And given the fact the airport has a real backlog of maintenance and improvements that it's wanting to do, I think the FAA would take a very dim view of that. Thirdly, some of the comments and I think some of the advocacy of certain members of the Community Noise Roundtable are clearly unlawful. For example, Commissioner Matt Jones expressly said he wanted to advocate for the airport to take airport property and put a conservation easement. That is just clearly a violation of federal law and just not going to fly with the aviation community. Number 2, Kyle Brown, vice chair, is beginning to advocate, and he specifically said this, that even though pilots may be operating lawfully, that we have to control the amount of operations and reduce the number of planes at the airport. Once again, that's unlawful, and the aviation community is just not going to let that fly. But it's disconcerting that it's coming from a vice chair. So I wanted to bring those items to your attention, and hopefully I'll see you folks in person next month. Keep up the good work and have a good night.
Okay, thank you, Brad. We have others.
No, that's it.
Okay. You all got a lot of information in the send from Ben about a week ago, including 2 sets of minutes we'd like to get approved. Everybody had a chance to take a look at those? I would hope.
I did.
Mostly head nods. Thanks, Randy. Let's try for the October minutes then. Do I have a motion to accept?
Make a motion. Accept the October minutes.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Tony and John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And let's move on to the November minutes.
Same.
Another motion from Tony.
I'll second that as well.
Okay, thanks, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Randy. So we're gonna get you had a lot of information, a lot of links to the agenda, if you had a chance to look at that. This is a topic of discussion today. So Paul, did you want to launch us on that?
Yes,
Okay, we're ready.
so first I'd like to thank the person. It's good to see everybody. It's, we've had some pretty big crowds through COVID and everything, so kind of exciting to have a room full of board members first and foremost, and then also people in the crowd. I will tell you, this is probably the most exciting meeting I think we're gonna have in the last year, if not the last 3 or 4 years, because we're talking about future planning and what we're gonna do here at the airport. So pretty exciting stuff coming up. So with that, Benjamin, next slide, please. So Brandon tracks our fuel. And in 2000, technically I started in December of 17, but we'll just say in 18. In 2018, we sold just over 3.7 million gallons of fuel. And at the end of this year, we're over 5.7 million gallons of fuel. The best fuel month we've ever had and the best fuel year we've ever had. And here's the kicker. 2 years ago, when we had the worst fires in Colorado history in 100 years, and the Forest Service was going gangbusters, we sold less fuel than we did when it was freezing cold out here, -14. And a lot of it is due to these three gentlemen right here, and our other FBO.
Again.
And signature participants. We have two very strong FBOs that service our community here, and the fact that these numbers are, continue to go up. And if you look, over last year, we had basically an 8.2, almost an 8.3 increase in fuel sales. What's important about that is the airport gets revenue from that. Not a lot of revenue, but we do get revenue. So the more fuel we sell means there's more aircraft coming in, more businesses coming in, and ultimately more income that the airport can use. Hey, Joe, welcome. Thanks for coming. You're not nervous, are you?
Certainly.
Next slide. Do we not have an operations slide, Ben?
You just wanted to feel one. We did operation.
Okay. Ben's fired.
November.
Second,
So one of the things at the year end, last year we had 201,000 operations for the year. And the numbers lag about a month, so we won't have December actual numbers until the end of January. But in the end of November, and then we just kind of calculate what we think we're gonna get in December. We're gonna cross 250,000 operations. We go from 201 to 250,000 operations in a year. And that may be even slightly more again when the final numbers come in. Will mean that Rocky Mountain Metro Airport had its busiest operational year since its inception in 1960. You remember from some of the slides we've done throughout the years, we had a high of 254,000 in like 1976. No, 254,000
Yeah.
in 1974, something back then. Again, Ben's fired because I don't have the slide. But welcome, John.
Thanks.
But again, we've had a banner year for operations and use of this airport. So really all positive stuff. So why are we here tonight? We're here tonight because we want to talk about the future of what we're going to do here at the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport with the south side coming up for development, how that's going to happen. So right now, the airport owns, leases, and maintains 120 general aviation T hangars. All county-owned T hangars are over 30 years old. Other hangar space provided by 100 plus port-to-port and box hangars are on the field. And all of our large hangars are under a ground lease, are almost close to 100% occupancy. So I got 3 calls today on my voicemail. Hey, you got any hangar space? Got anything available? And it's like, no, we have nothing. We are at capacity. So, next slide, please. If you go down and look at our bulletin board, there's at least 5 space wanted, hangar wanted signs on our billboard there on our bulletin board. And we have waiting lists for all of our T hangar. So our T hangar, our Cat 1s have 264 people on that list. Cat 2 has 268 people on that list. Cat 3 has 180 people on that list. And our rates for those hangars are Cat 1 is 329, Cat 2 is 337, and Cat 3 is 622. That's a month. Sir,
You might say how long the waiting lists are in years too.
about 6 to 8 years. It used to be over 10 years, and we got that down. We got rid of a lot of motorhomes and boats and turned people over and stuff. 10 years, it's about 6 years now on our waiting list. There are frequent inquiries to build or to lease hangars on our airport. Next slide. So here's what's exciting. I got here in 2017, and I was told Sims Road's going to be moved. You've got 200 acres to develop over on the south side. In 2023, Sims Road, which is that yellow/orange line, will get moved, and it will be the new red line. So Ben, so it'll be basically, that'll be the new Sims. Everything north of that will be developable for aviation. That road gets moved this summer. Sims Road, you can see there's kind of a grayed out area. Sims Road is actually going to be left in place for use by our, people who want to cut through, people going to the tower, until 2024, when the FAA funds taxiway Otis, which is basically the shape and direction of that gray area. So we're going to move that road in the following year. We're going to get money to build that taxiway. And then there's Bird Parkway up there, which may or may never be developed again. We think it would be positive for the airport to have the Bird Parkway, but it's one of those things that may or may never happen. Next slide, Ben. This is from our strategic business plan. A year and a half ago, Ben? So the Airport Advisory Board, the people sitting here and their predecessors, did the strategic, or what do we call that?
Strategic business plan.
No, that was this. What-
Oh, the development framework.
The development framework. So they kind of looked at the airport and said, what could you build? How could you build? What's a good way to develop out the airport? We took that, gave it to a consultant, and they kind of took it into the business model of how we develop this airport. So again, this is illustrative. This is illustrative. It is not, this is what we're doing. But we have, I might come up here and point, or can you do it with your marker, Ben? The potential development lease, and to the right of that, we on Tuesday, which was yesterday, the lease was finally signed and recorded for the 30 acres between Pilatus and the water tanks. So all that property is now leased, and they'll be building large hangars out there over the next year or 2 years to get it all built. And then there's taxiway Otis, the north-south taxiway that the FAA is going to fund. So we get $6 million in 2024, then an additional $3 million, right, Matt? Additional $3 million in 2026. So we can either extend it along that north-south axis, or you might use that money to shoot one of those side offshoots. Again, depends on what the demand is, all that, construction costs, all that stuff. But we've got money to build that taxiway. Beyond that, we've got the Pilatus right of first refusal at 7.9 acres. When they built their paint shop, they said, hey, we get a contract for government planes. We want to have an ability to kind of have a campus. So we've got that sort of area reserved for them. Beyond that, this is what we're going to talk about tonight. How do we take this illustrative of, a little mix of hangars here, hangars there, and how do we divide that out? A couple questions are, does the airport do it all? Do we take the risk? Obviously, with the risk comes the reward, and we develop that whole 200 acres. Or do we reserve 5 acres, 10 acres, 40 acres, and say, hey, this is airport developable land. We're going to do this, and we'll let developers do the rest. Let them take the risk. So that's sort of the business case that I want the advisory board to work on, is what makes the most sense. So next slide, Ben. Next step, then we'll open up as a conversation to include people in the crowd, because that's the way we roll. In Ben's, in my mind, we think, forming some working groups, right? To address sort of what What are those different aspects of development? So for example, market feasibility. How much demand is there? And what is that demand for? Is it for size hanger, this size hanger, that size hanger? Construction. Do you do steel? Do you do asphalt? Do you do concrete? Do you do, those Quonset hut tents that are out there? What makes sense and how much does it cost? What are the lease rates that the market will bear? And what's the airport's return on investment for that lease rate? The type, the scale, and the timing. Again, do we build 100 T hangers? We build 60 box hangers. Do we build two 30,000 square foot hangars and lease them to, Shelter or Signature that you put corporate planes in? All those are possibilities. Do we build 10 acres of asphalt and bring in 5 flight schools?
No.
I probably agree with you. But again, that's something to look at, saying, hey, if a flight school wanted to come in here, again, low fuel, high ops, that's probably not the best for the airport. Again, when you look, I had somebody come into my office the other day and go, the lineup to get on the runway was 22 planes long, a week ago, I guess it was.
Really?
So that's probably not the best answer, but I think we need to consider it because we don't discriminate against any type of aviation business. And then funding and developmental mechanisms. Again, do we go with a PPP? Do we do bonds? The airport's got some land sales going on over on the Verve, so we could basically pay cash for it. Or do we just say, hey, we're just going to do a little 5-acre kind of a small thing, and then maybe just let everybody, developers do it. That way we don't have any risk. So that's kind of where we're at now. What I will say is I'm open to anything. What I want to be able to do is have a conversation about what makes this the airport the best in the state, if not the best in the country. We're businesses, we're pilots, we're, cross-country people want to come in here, they want to stop at our airport, and they want to either spend the night or spend the weekend, go up and ski. And so we have, what a dream, right? We have 200 acres of undeveloped land, a taxiway going in to access it. And so it's like winning the lottery almost, to have that ability at an airport. Instead of going, well, we're going to crunch in this little spot here, we're going to have to tear all this stuff down here. On the south side, we have wide open imagination. So with that, and I do want to say, this all started when John and I were talking about 3 months ago. And he said, well, why T hangers? Do you remember that conversation, John? And I was like, well, that's what airports build. Like, we build the lowest cost, airports or hangars. And that's just what airports do. I had never even considered anything other than saying, how many T hangars? 5, 10, 15, 100. And he goes, well, we need to look at other things. And so that started my brain thinking about, you're right. There's a lot of opportunity over there. We don't have to necessarily settle on one thing. We can do a mix. We can do all things. So again, thank you for that, John. Kind of an off the cuff after a meeting comment, got Ben and I thinking about this. So with that, I think that's the last slide, right, Ben?
Right.
I'll open it up to the floor.
Jim Wood, I'm a tenant here. So I'm gonna ask a really stupid question, but humor me, okay? The waiting list where we had what, 600 or so planes? Do we know how accurate that is? I mean, do people ever call up and say, hey, take me off your list?
Rarely.
Because my thought is, and this is my stupid question, humor me. Daryl about slapping when I asked before the meeting. Where are these 600 planes today? Every ramp in this area is empty. Like, our east ramp, other than ATP, there's no permanent tie downs, or very few. Boulder's a ghost town. Erie doesn't have anything out there. And so my simple brain says, if a guy's got a plane and needs a hangar, where's the plane? Not the Walmart parking lot. So are we just building hangars here to relieve hangar or open up space in hangars in Boulder and Longmont and Front Range and Erie?
Well, I hope I destroy all those
You
airports.
see what I'm saying? No, I know. That's my simple brain
So,
saying, where the hell
the
are
reason you
these
see
planes?
space on top of it is because nobody wants to put a plane that they own.
I get
on
it.
a tie down.
I get it.
Again, when you look at our list, it's a long list.
I get it.
And we do scrub that list about every other year.
But my question, I get that, because I don't want my plane tied down either, but where are the planes then? That are,
Hey, this This is Randy. You know, they're at inferior airports. They want to come to the best. That's why they'll come over here.
But nobody wants tied, or nobody wants a hangar here.
You know, if you're at Front Range, it's too far to drive. If you're at Erie, you got too much construction going on and the noise.
I can just, this is a one tenant of ours, Nathan, that I helped find a tie down. He's on the tie down with us right now. But he was at Erie and his commute was just too far. And so, you know, Shelter has 2 leasable tie downs. Realistically, that's what it is. And so we do have tie down folks. And so we made a deal with him to go ahead and be able to lease a tie down there because the hangar option is a bit too expensive for his taste. But, you know, we're asking for tie down or T hangar rental spaces because they're trying. It's Nathan being one of them. And that's the most recent example that I can give.
I kind of get that. It's just 600. Like a whole lot of,
Well, also Nathan was getting charged $8,000 more
For his insurance.
since he was outside.
Yeah.
Versus being there's insurance. Divide that by 12, but
Yeah.
I just hate to
My-
spend
my-
millions of dollars and
My hangar that I lease, I still don't know how they get mine. But I get called. I lease the whole thing. But I also will tell you, there are a lot of people who are gonna buy an airplane once they have a hangar. Get that.
Yeah.
yeah, 600 seems like a whole
I
lot
had a
of
couple
that.
people stop by the hangars. Same thing.
Well, the bifurcation between the 3 lists.
Ben, do you know that?
Some,
And there is some because they'll say, I'll take anything.
Right.
But most people don't want to spend $622 a month if they can fit in a Cat 1 or Cat 2. So they just sign up for the 1 or 2. And
You
again,
allow subleasing here too, right?
in our T hangars, we do not,
Do not, okay.
yes. Not saying it doesn't occur, and we try to manage that. But we do not allow subleasing. So again, we don't think that's fair.
Okay,
Because
because
we rent
that could be,
for 320 and then you rent it to a guy for 700.
or somebody just is buying the hangar for the return on investment because they can see they can just rent it out to somebody else.
Yep.
So,
If you think about the Pilatus hangars, when they all sold.
Yeah.
You know, those went for $400,000 roughly each. And, you know, they have some of them 4 planes in them and, you know, they're spending $1,000 a month for, you know, quarter share of that hangar.
So I have 60 by 60.
But they have a plane up front.
You guys never gonna move you. I have 60 by 60. It'll fit 3
Yeah.
planes. I have a Cirrus, the other guy in there. I had, you used to have 3 airplanes in there because I had 1. And I stopped, we're down to 2 now, but we're each paying 80.
So
But 3
it's a good,
planes.
it's a good lead-off question, because any expansion business airport, you have to validate demand. Is demand there, and then how long is it gonna last? Is it durable? That's the first thing you gotta answer. So, good lead-off question. What else we got back there?
oh, he was second. So
Okay. Daryl, go ahead.
Oh, I have a few questions here. If you
Hold the
develop
cart.
this project on the hangars, where's the money gonna come from?
That's developed. So there's a couple different opportunities. There's public partnership, where you get a developer and a government entity and they kind of pull their money and can do it. We could do bonds. The airport has significant cash reserves right now, because we've had some land sales. Again, it's all depending on, you know, if we build 20 T hangars, we just write a check for it. If we decide to build 1,000 T hangars, then we gotta either partner with somebody to fund that, check with Joe's, you know.
FAA would give you money?
The who?
FAA.
Not. And here's what everyone doesn't understand, especially some of the people who call into the noise. They're like, oh, well, the FAA would pay for a noise study. Like, we get a limited amount of money, and we have to fight for that money. And then we have to decide what the priority of that money is. And obviously, our priorities are the runways and taxiways. They do terminals sometimes. Rarely do they ever do hangars. I don't know if anyone else knows about it, but the FAA almost never does hangars. I won't say never, but rarely.
They do terminal.
If,
They do terminals,
But that's even hard.
and that's hard too.
That's
Is it?
not-
And with the condition, as you guys know, we did what, 3 months ago, we did the crosswind runway. They're certainly not gonna give me, you know, $3 or $4 million to build, hangars and not fund a runway. So like, there's just, the money's not there for the FAA to do hangars. Oh, ask them.
Airport's very, yeah. Go get it.
You got this thing off the ground, what would you do with the old T hangers?
Nothing eventually. As I said, when I first started here and you were in the meeting, it's probably 10 years away before I move the T hangers. Eventually, they'll get moved to the south side. Along with the porta ports.
You mean in their old condition or new ones? Or-
I would build new ones. I don't think, and again, I'm not a construction guy. I don't think that a 30-year-old T hanger with the doors and everything, it would be worth to be like, oh, we could save this panel. And I think we just scrap them and we build all brand new ones.
And charge us a lot of money.
Charge you fair market value.
Yeah, right, I like that.
So,
That's not funny. That's
real.
No, it's not funny, but, you know.
but if you recall, I've said that from the day I got here, that this airport was not designed well, that we have our smallest planes right next to our biggest runway. And those should be back. So part of that is, and I think part of the discussion, well, that's actually a great question, is we have to plan for the movement of the porta ports and the T hangers. So if you do sort of the school acreage of that and plop it over on the south side, that at a minimum is what I would say we need to do from the airport's perspective. Now, again, I'm kind of a bold guy. I'm like, I'll develop the whole thing.
How many
Build
acres
phase
is
one.
that? How many acres
But
is this over here?
Ben, do you remember? I think it's 13.
For where the current T hangers are?
Yeah, the current T
Porta
hanger.
ports and the T hangers.
Somewhere in
Yeah,
that range.
it's like 11 to 13 again.
maybe, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Oh, the movement on the airport works today. Big airplanes, little airplanes, they all work, even though the hangars are
Does it?
situated the way you don't like it.
It's not like I don't like it. I'm like, no, I want the pink ones over here and the blue ones over here. I look at it and go, that is not how you design an airport. The bigger hangars and the bigger planes should be next to the bigger runway. Smaller planes, smaller hangars should be farther away because they burn less fuel and less, cost to taxi them. They should be farther away. That's airport design 101. And I don't think it does work actually, because we have 22 or more planes sitting waiting to take off on this side. Whereas if we had those planes sitting on the south side on the shorter runway, which is plenty long for 90% of what would be flying, it'd be more efficient.
We do, I fly a lot here. I've been 8 or 10, never 22. But it seems like it's timing of the flight schools. You go out there on the hour as example, yeah, you might have 10 planes fly up. But I've taxied out there and been number one. Same with the rifles. You might circle up north with 8 planes circling. And then didn't necessarily come in, you're the first one in. So I think you got to put that in perspective. 22 maybe happens, but it's certainly not the norm.
No, I would say that even we have a first-hand view on that end of the airport too. So there are several days where we're just like, oh crap, the aircraft on there. And then, coming from the sake that we refuel these flight schools very often, our busiest times are probably in the mornings between 7 and 10 sometimes, and then
7, 8, and then around like 11, 12.
yeah, you have these windows of opportunity where everybody's scheduling and the schools themselves will have dropouts where they'll call somebody, hey, I got an open spot and you got to rush down here. So there's also that factor to consider as well.
Another thing I've heard happen, unless you go out there and get in line, you never get in the air. Your hour is up and you're taxiing back. Not only does it cost you what, $180 taxi out there and back, but that's pretty discouraging as a student to say that might never get there. So I appreciate what you're saying. There are moments where it's overpopulated, but there are a lot of moments. Look at what's going on. You can get out there, take off, and go right on. So there's got to be a balance here somewhere.
I'm gonna do.
I suggest the flight schools try to work on that.
Greg, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, and it's the plan. The shaded parts are, what is the development timeline we're looking at here? You said Sims is being moved in the summer of 2023.
Yep.
What is the timeline for that construction? Is it going to be following along the same pathway as your proposed construction here? And you had mentioned phases, so do we have an idea of obviously I want to get on the ground up this money. So, what are we looking at as far as the time frame for all of this?
So let's call.
Because this is a large mixed-use project.
Yeah, so can you go back one slide, Ben, to the illustrative? So phase one is that developmental lease, and then to the right of it, they're under the clock. They have 6 months of due diligence where they get to make sure there's no, Indian artifacts or, chemical waste or whatever. Then they start paying rent. So it is in their best interest to build quickly. So I would say they would have a very good chance to start breaking ground on that 30 acres this summer.
So we're looking at that included, I'm looking at the sheet that we're getting out here. So we're looking at commercial passenger where it says potential development.
Yep.
At 16.7 acres. Is that different from what I'm looking at on the sheet here?
So it is, so again, remember, this was a people business plan, and they just had to get some stuff out.
Okay,
If you think about where Pilatus is
yes,
and where our water tanks is,
got it.
and where current Sims is.
Yeah.
Everything airport side of Sims is under lease.
Okay,
When Sims gets moved, and if you could go to that Sims diagram, Ben, to that red line, everything south of that yellow line basically opens up. Not actually, because we have to get a taxiway over there.
right.
So that's happening in 2024.
Okay.
Now, if someone was bold, they could go, I believe Paul's gonna get this done, even though no one else on the planet could. Sorry, it's just. I'm gonna build my
You were
fast.
thinking when you thought. of this.
Yeah, I did.
Right.
I'm gonna build my, hangar facility, whatever, because I know that road's getting moved and that taxiway's coming through.
Right.
They could basically open in 2022. I don't guess that. Because
Because
the FAA is, there's a lot of variables, but all of that is progressing on schedule.
in your funding, is your funding 100%?
It's the FAA's, never
Yeah.
100%.
So
When does it become 100%? When a grant is actually issued?
when it happens.
Yeah, so no, it's not 100%, but we did the scoping meeting, which is a very good first step.
Okay.
They're funding the design, which is a really good second step. So the FAA is expending time and money this year for next year. So again, those are really good indicators that that's gonna happen.
Are there plans along with your developmental plans for the access road between the tanker base and Pilatus to modify it, widen it, or make it easier for the large jet fuel trucks? to pass?
Nope. We're gonna have to get an FBO, I believe, and that's a conversation, we need to get, so, go back to Greg's question. We gotta get through phase one, which is that 30 acres, we just kind of sealed the deal yesterday. It was recorded and signed by the commissioner and all that, so now we're like taking a deep breath, kind of start our planning, with the advisory board looking into where do we put an FBO? Do we put an FBO or do we just put self-fuel? How do we service that? The problem with that road is, as you guys have never driven on it, straight down on one side.
Yeah.
Airfield on the other side with the safety area. There's no room to expand that road, so, we believe there'll be a full FBO or an FBO annex of an existing company here, so they don't have to fill the full, FBO requirement, 15 acres and all that stuff. Or just self-fueling, again, I think that's a conversation that's probably in the next step of the planning. For the board, how do we get fuel to planes on the south side? Because guess what, if I build a bunch of hangars and there's a bunch of planes over there and I can't get fuel to them, I'm not gonna be a happy guy.
Would you be looking at an additional steel farm in this mixed use?
Has to, right?
Right.
Yeah, again, what that does is keep those trucks from driving around, we actually have the farm on the other side. So there will be a farm, almost if you think about developing this airport, we have two separate airports. We have the south side that's completely separate from the north side, and so it's gonna have to have all the, requirements to run that airport.
I might be premature, but,
You want 10 acres off the south?
no thanks. Have you have to submit some sort of a plan or something
To
in relationship to this project you wanted to,
submit a plan to,
is it too early?
yes. So there's no building permit There's no,
Okay.
I mean, we're in the middle of the planning for the taxiway. That's being designed right now, but everything else, go ahead.
Graphics showing on there. That's step one.
I just wondered if anywhere you put in writing what you think the rents might be.
The rents.
Rents, if you build these hangars.
So I think go back to the last slide. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you guys to pause for a moment. Those are all great questions, but now I'd like to have the board kind of churn on those. The last question, last slide, Ben.
As in very last
The
slide?
very last slide, yeah. Right? Like the lease rate and the marketability study. I think, and actually I'll give Randy credit, doesn't happen very often, but he said we should do a survey of all those people on the waiting list. What size hangar do they want? And what market rate would they be scared away? So I think that's kind of the due diligence that at this group I'd like to kind of start thinking about of how do we find out, if we build all T hangars and everybody wants box hangars, we missed the mark. If we build all box hangars, everybody wants T hangars and nobody wants to pay the rent, we've missed the mark. So we want to have a customer that actually meets, the demand of what we build. And again, on top of that, how much do we build? Do we just take a little risk and say, hey, we're just gonna build 25 hangars and we're gonna be happy with that? That's gonna bring us money. Or do we say, no, we're gonna go big and we're gonna build 200 hangars? Or just 10 hangars, but they're all gonna be 30,000 square feet. We're gonna get top dollar for them. So. And again, that's where we're kind of like, at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to the experts and say, what do we need to do from a working group aspect so that we can start getting this information and actually formulating a plan? Now, the good news is we have time with the road and the taxiway, but it would be nice to be able to sort of lay out a strong plan now or in the next couple months to say, hey, here's what we think. And again, it's all market driven. So if the market dries up, then we don't build. We wait until it turns around. I mean, that's the way, the nature of the beast. Do you have a question, David?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think there's a good list to do the analysis from a business perspective. I'd add to this list
Ben, are you taking notes?
that we should evaluate any sort of operational aspects of this, right? The discussion about having a fuel farm, right? I mean, we could make decisions on, putting a bunch of airplanes over there, but if we don't have a fuel farm or if that's not feasible, then, the business plan doesn't work, right?
Yep.
So,
Operational constraints, great discussion to have.
One more, regards to maybe a cargo operation or anything like that, is there any forethought of, we have Amazon not too far away, so we've got UPS apparently building a facility built. So what are we looking at in that? Have you got any wind of that? You can't say.
You want to play poker after this game?
There are some talks about cargo. The one thing about cargo is to make cargo successful, you need big planes with a lot of weight. Our runway doesn't support that. There is a business model that uses smaller planes, and I'm actually talking to a company. But I can't discriminate. So if someone were to come in and say, we have a business model, we'd like to do it, we need this side hangar, this side operation, I'd say, yeah, let's talk. But I have not talked to Amazon. How about that? Randy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I see is this project has to be big enough to cover the infrastructure costs, whether we do it from the airport sale of land or we do it from the partnership. But, we need to bring in roads, taxiways, electrical, sewer, water. And how far do we bring it? Do we bring that in steps so far down each side, or we bring it all the way and then we start building? But I think we're at the point where we have to make this a large enough project to accommodate the porta ports and the T hangars, at least from an infrastructure point of view. I think the revenue's there, and our current revenue is good to support what we're doing. So I think that it has to be a comprehensive plan, not just a little at a time.
I'll have a question for you. I think I know the answer to this, but it was before my time on this board, but we have looked at the rates we're charging for hangar space, T hangars and ports, and we're charging a market rate or somewhere in the zip code of market rates.
We're approaching now, yeah.
Approaching.
Over the 5-year kind of scale.
But previously, we were way.
Correct. Actually, this board did a study,
Right.
and we did market adjustments on a lot of the hangars, to get us up to market, or at least close to market now.
Right.
Paul, if you pulled money, what would it cost to accomplish these 5 things, study wise and bring in the consultants?
It's free because I got you guys.
You thought you were getting paid, Janice?
I can buy you guys a hamburger when it's all done. How about that?
We get pizza once a year.
I mean, is it all in-house or are you looking to bring in someone?
So what I think, and again, I haven't sort of, this is like step one, right? I mean, we just went through with the FAA and we went through these steps, so that's gonna happen, or we just had our meetings with the developers. Sims is moving, so this stuff's kind of coming quick, even though it's taken me 5 years to get it done. What I've done with other things is have the board look at it and get us to a point of sort of their expertise, and then turn it over to an expert and say, hey, here's how, what the real cost would be. So I haven't decided, and I think a lot of that just depends on the scope of what you guys recommend. Again, if you guys recommend 13 acres for the T hangar and port-to-port relocation, we think that's what the airport should be doing, let developers do everything else. I don't need a consultant to do that, right? But if you guys are saying, hey, we need to have a mix of, X, Y, and Z, and we should be doing this, this, and this, then I do think we take that and we say, okay, let's get an expert, and figure it out. And I've got 2 experts in the back of the room that can help us with that. Costs and layout and infrastructure costs. So, I don't think I'm at that decision point yet. I think that's something that will come from the discussions that we have over the next couple of months about, hey, this board's leaning forward saying, let's go big. Then we go and say, let's be safe and just, make sure we're not missing anything. Because again, when you do something this scope, you really don't want, we forgot about the fuel farms. Oy, 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 well, how do we do that? So, John, you had a question?
So, yeah, I did. The question I have is, we've got this 200 acres that we're looking at, and there's obviously options, whether the airport develops and owns and leases, or whether ground leases and less developers take on. Do you have any feeling or idea what the overall larger market is out there for a developer to come in and do something, or a individual company to come in and do their own facility? Is there similar demand all over where we really have these things to choose from, or is there really more demand for one thing than another?
I think there's demand for every category. I keep it to myself, because again, I don't want to influence sort of the discussion, but I see that there's a specific demand for a specific style or size of a hangar. Those are the people who come to me and say, I want to build it myself, or do you have that available, things. So, but I would say across the board, we have demand for small to large. I mean, you got your second hangar B done, it's sold out and booked, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we have a 30,000, 60,000 square foot hangar.
We were just at the ribbon cutting, right?
Yeah, it's booked. All of our T hangars, all of our porta-ports, all of our box hangars are leased. So there's a demand across the board. I think there is a stronger demand from a developer's point of view to build a certain style, because I think the return on investment is higher.
Right, okay.
I do think, and I think this is where we go back to whether it's 13 or 20 acres or whatever, there is a certain aspect of, well, we still need those T hangars for those small, mom and pop plane owners that want to fly. And if I were to turn it all over to the developers, most likely they wouldn't be built.
That's not what they built.
Right. So I think there's a civic duty to at least look at that and say,
Yeah, sure.
and here's the tough part. Those hangars are expensive to build, and you bring in the least amount of rent.
Right.
So that's the business aspect of that is, can we make that work?
Right. Go ahead. Just one last follow-up. Have we had in the recent history, last 25 years or so, a time ever where the existing hangars, T hangars and ports and stuff were not full at this airport? Has there ever been a surplus of hangars where you could just show up and rent one?
Not that I know of.
No.
I've been here since 75.
In ever, right, okay.
I guess that's if we're underserved. It's a good question.
That's currently under construction. I mean, the steel's starting to move, or the ground is starting to move, and the
Right.
steel's over there. And without divulging too much information, we have people who are looking to rent out, like, all of them.
Right.
So there is an increased demand for sure, which we would not be building.
And you're built 30,000, CD&E are gonna be big.
Yeah, they're gonna be
30,000.
partitioned out in 3 different segments, but, yes, that's the canvas size. It'll be having a facade on it as well. Then we'll have hangar F right after that as well, and then that's what I'll drink myself.
Let the record reflect.
Hopefully not, but we'll get ten.
Did you have a comment, Doug?
Yeah, I
And
got
let's-
3 comments. Number one, I am glad to hear you say a civic duty. I call it I think we have a duty to the aviation industry. And I think it is exactly that I think very important that we continue to provide opportunities for people to own planes, starting at the entry level and move through. We have to remember that pilots start all in the same type of little single piston engine, but that's subcapacity, right? And they move up, whether it's the airlines, whether it's whatever. And it's important to the whole industry. And so as well as of the passion of aviation and keeping that alive. So I think that as an airport, we don't have to just always look right at the business model. I think it's very important. It has to make sense, but I think there's a piece too that we should make sure we're meeting everything. Number two, I think hangars across this country, David, you fly around the country. I mean, there's a shortage of hangars everywhere. Everybody I know who's got airplanes, whatever airport it is, Pacific Northwest, Southern California, Arizona, it's a problem. There just aren't. Thirdly, I want to remind you of a conversation. I actually think from approach from the developer standpoint, remember there's an in-between. There's also a lot of developers that will work off of a fee basis and do things, and kind of, and then the airport hires them, master plan this, we'll build this in phases. They're not making any money. They're not in it for the end game. They're in or ownership. They're on it. You're paying it. And a lot of developers that will bring the expertise in, develop it from the T hangars all the way through, or even a combination. You might say, hey, you're going to develop this for a fund fee. Airport wants to own this, and you can have this, and you can own that thing. So there's some in-betweens there on how to approach that with the development.
So real quick for the board members, obviously, a lot to digest, a lot of comments. Everybody agree that this is something we should work on as a board? Any other views than that? I think you guys would be pretty much on board with getting your viewpoints in here. Okay, so that's, Randy, you don't dissent on that one?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Timeline, Paul, that you're looking for the board's input?
Next week.
Give us 15 minutes to write something down.
Got a napkin? I think a serious approach of this would be about 6 months. Again, I think you guys say now it's too long or it's not long enough.
Okay.
But I think 6 months to, again, there's some deep sort of things we need to consider. And that's just to get to the point where we're like, hey, we have a recommendation that we should, do this sort of, one step above the illustrative. And then I think we can, at that point, again, make the decision of, hey, we're just gonna hire someone to do it for us, then we'll own them. Great, that probably, I don't need to hire a consultant, the builder would need a consultant. Or we're gonna take a huge chunk and we're gonna do it ourselves, or we're not, so I think, we get 6 months in, discussing this, and I don't know if we wanna bring in builders or, again, sort of the.
Get some experts.
Get some experts in here to kind of give presentations, but, you guys tell me, does that sound reasonable and sort of sound in a planning cycle?
Yeah, no, I think that's okay.
I actually think, Paul, one thing that could be interesting, and I don't think it'd be a lot of money, but to get who's our airport consultant?
Aviation.
Right here.
Yeah. Matt just said it won't cost us a thing. So.
Yeah. Maybe to assist in some of the laying out, we go through the feasibility, some of the options, and it's still at this high level conceptual pole drawing type things, but to help guide Because we could all sit here and say, you know, hey, well, we need box hangers and this. They could say, okay, well, you think you put this many box hangers here, we need this taxiways, this many T hangers might be help, even in this conceptual feasibility study to help put that together with the right experts. We could do a lot of work and then.
But where do you put the fuel pump?
you-
How do you access it? How do you?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Figure some of that
Again,
out.
this is a huge undertaking. I think we have smart people in the room. We have experts that, you know, work for us as engineers, can help us. There's consultants, but,
So
Yeah.
how do we organize this task? I understand when there's some constraints about how many board members can work together.
Well,
Eh,
no, there's not. So if they're just, if we were to say these are the 5 buckets we want to go after first, these first topical areas. I think that it's 2 board members can work on a subcommittee or a task without having public forum meetings.
Only 2 though?
Yeah. I think it's 2.
But
And then report back to the board
Is
on
there a
their findings from the work.
In working on something versus having a meeting.
Just means that if it's more than 2, it just means that
Pick up the public.
we have to have a little bit more structured meeting like
You do have
this,
to have it.
and it has to be open to the public.
Main
Which
thing
is okay, it's just a different
Open to
structure.
the public and noticed,
I'm sorry.
properly noticed.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Tony, your question or comment?
Yeah, isn't it, you can have the discussion, you can't commit to a plan. without
On a
the
work
open.
session.
I think it was,
You
there's,
4 could meet for the discussion, but you couldn't formulate a rock solid plan without an open and.
Well, no, we'd still have
public
to notice, we'd still have to do. it'd still be-
It's okay.
Let's,
Then you-
Ben actually
Yeah.
brought this up because we thought this question would come
Of
up.
course, it's gonna come up, yeah.
Ben, can you give the direction from the county
I did
attorney?
not get the clearest direction from the county attorney, but this is what I
That's a shot.
understand. Yeah,
I
if
got
there's
3
any
answers from the
discussion
county
of
attorney.
board-related business, it has to be 2 or less before, if it's more than 2 people, it needs to be noticed. If there's any discussion among 3 or more people on this board about anything related to do with the airport, other than when can we meet?
Which is fine. We want more than 2 people on a discussion point, if we just do it that way. But you can move a little bit more nimbly on just some not decision-making work, but just kind of data mining. You could do a lot of data mining on a few of these topics that are pivotal for larger discussions about what should we or shouldn't do.
Should we fine tune these then? Because like, when I look at market feasibility, to me, both lease rate and ROI should roll up under that as a subsection of market feasibility, as with type scale and timing under construction, because you don't want to do those separate from those. There has to be some that fall in line when we get to that next.
Yeah, I would call type scale and, I mean, well, type and scale, I'd call that design.
So we have some people that do this for a living. I'm John, this was your world as well for a long time. Maybe still is, but let me suggest this for the board members. Take a look at that chart. Talk about how we might compress different subject areas into larger concept groups or whatever. Give us your thought on, should we hit the ground running with kind of two-person teams to do the initial, and this is just kind of the initial digging into data facts and trying to gather some information on some of these topics to bring back to the larger board. That's how we've done the bigger things in the past. And then like on the framework document, I mean, we spent the time in the room as a group, for a few sessions to get that right, because we wanted everybody's opinion to kind of be heard at the same time, weighing that and moving forward, which I'm sure is where this is going to go as well, in a second step. But
Well, can't
a
we
little
go,
faster to get data. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can't we go to executive session, and discuss this and assign committees and talk about it? And get everybody's feelings, what they want to work on and who should be on each committee. Would that be more efficient?
We can do that.
I'm gonna say no,
Why are you saying-
because I have to say certain things to go into executive session, which I have not prepped for.
Okay.
So if we think that's an appropriate thing for maybe the next meeting, then I need to get to the county attorney, and there's a reason why we're entering it, and there's a process, and again, we're a public body, we just wanna be careful with that.
The answer is you can do it. We're not prepared to do it at the end of this meeting. Well, what I would suggest is, why don't you guys chew on this? give us your compression of different topics if you think that's necessary. One, and tell us which one you might be interested in participating in, which subject area might fit your background best or your interest best. Get that back to us. And then I would suggest that Jansen and I and Paul get together with, after your input is in the next few days, before the next board meeting. And try to just maybe package this up a little bit, and then we can get that back out to you for a review and say, these are the study teams we think are the best to go forward with in the first step here.
I don't think that's the right.
And
Kind of put some names
kind of
next to them.
follow up on Tony's question, it's 2 members, but you can meet with airport staff.
Oh, right.
So when you need like data.
Right.
So let's say you're doing the list of all the people on the waiting list, like we have staff who can schedule time and meet with you and get you the data that you need and kind of help sort of the process. So there's no limit to that. I can have,
Yeah.
you know, it's just Ben, it's just me.
Or questions,
It's
the JV.
operational people, we can bring in, you know, the aviation and talk about fuel fund. I mean, so it's not limited to like 2 people in a cone of silence. It's 2 board members with the appropriate, levels of information.
And if I'm hearing you right anyway, those 2 just get to run point on a thing to bring it back to a work
Absolutely.
session.
Yes.
It's not a
So it's just that we
decision-making
can do
group.
all
It's
the work to get to a work session.
It's a
We want everybody. This is that.
data gathering.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more than
I think
anything.
that's
And validating.
Yeah, I guess I feel like there needs to be a strategic discussion, almost before we start digging into the details, because we don't know what details to dig into yet. And I think that strategic discussion, you know, has a lot to do with the markets that we serve, you know, to John's point about, you know, it's all of aviation, right? But what does that mean? And I think there's a discussion about, does the county want to be a developer and a landlord? Or, you know, what's our risk tolerance, I guess, for.
Aye.
Okay.
Commissioners are not sitting there with us.
Is there the support? there?
Absolutely.
That's my nature, I go. I think that is a good question, because do we want to be take the risk of the whole thing? Do we want to take a little safe spot? The airport absolutely wants to develop something. And the reason being is because there is a huge return on investment when you own the hangars. So those T hangars that are 30 years old, producing income for 30 years. And so when you look, we build new ones, that's gonna carry this airport for that. So absolutely, we want to be a developer. I think the question is, how much? Do we kind of take the safe slice and say, we're just gonna do the T hangars and ports in that 15-acre spot? Or we say, hey, we see a market for the box hangars and the other size hangars and the C, D, and E hangars. And, you know, basically we build hangars and let Shelter or Signature sublease from us, because we know that there's businesses that want to come in here. That's kind of the big, you know, that's sort of the strategic discussion you're talking about, is like, what's our vision for that?
Yeah,
I think there's
it's the vision and the risk tolerance and how much capital you want to put at risk, and, you know, are there better uses for that capital, you know, in other respects. You know, there's a bunch of things like that to me that would drive what we're gonna go do.
There's no doubt you're correct, but I think there are a few predecessor things we can go do to get to that discussion. We've talked about, is that demand real on the hangar list? How much of it is real, right? If there's one guy on all 3 hangar lists, right? If they're also on Centennial's hangar list, they're also on several others, they're gonna go to first available. So there's some validating of even the base facts that we need to do. There's Randy's statement on the infrastructure. We can gather that information and say, this is how much it costs to go to each of those sections. Here's how much leveling has to happen. All of that can be done ahead of talking the strategy of what do you put on the land. That all has to happen no matter what you do with it. There's also some things we can do with, I don't know that the county or the airport, and I said some questions to Ben already on this, act like a business when they're talking about opportunity costs and risk assessment. Businesses have a very defined way of doing that. Each business may be different, but they have a very defined structure for doing that. I don't know that the county operates that way. I asked a lot of questions about that to Ben, just topical ones, but I haven't heard back, so I don't know that he knows yet.
Well, I can give you an answer. The county guidance has to do with when do they replace capital assets, but it has nothing to do with whether they can make a profit or not. It's all
So,
Right.
lifespan, life cycle.
It's in the airport's an enterprise
But
for the
yeah,
county,
there's
so
an
it's,
exception.
it's not the county. This is a subset within the county. Enterprises
so,
are
but
our business.
understanding
Well,
how
I
they
guess, I
view
get,
it.
yeah, and maybe I don't fully understand sort of what authority you have as the airport manager to make those decisions without, county approval to make those investments, so.
So the way this would work is we spend the next X amount of months formulating a plan.
Yeah.
We decide if we need a consultant. I would, at that point, whether we get a consultant or not, go brief the commissioners, much like I did the strategic business plan. Here's what this is, here's the highlights, here's what we want to do. They ask questions, they say, you really need to be more smaller generation, that's civic duty, or no, you really need to drive more profit. Again, that's a discussion. I bring that back, then we go forward again, and then when that plan is sort of finalized, I go back and say, I took your comments and your questions and I've incorporated them in our plan. We've had the experts look at it. Do you approve? And then they say thumbs up. Again, that's like step one, because then we gotta finance it. Got to have, if it's a developer, we've got to have the developer come in, sign the lease. But at least they've approved sort of that strategic plan at a high level. And what we're taking is our strategic plan, which has been approved a year and a half ago, I think it was, and saying, how much of that does the airport want to take on as an investment and the risk? Because the strategic business plan has been approved. So if I just did nothing, and I let developers roll in and just say, hey, I want this parcel, I want this parcel, I don't really have to go get permission other than brief the lease to the commissioners. What we're doing is sort of the next step, saying, for the financial well-being of this enterprise, what is the long-term business plan that makes the most sense so that this airport is financially sound for the next, 50 or 100 years. One of the things, if you pay attention, airports are slowly going broke and going to their sponsors, which are cities and councils, or counties, and asking for money because they're not making good business sense. And I don't want to be in that position. At least not while I'm here. When Ben takes over.
As a board member, I don't think it makes a difference. Even if we make a mistake, Paul's taking all the responsibility.
Well, and one of the things we said it quickly in passing here is Paul still wants to move all the current T hangar occupants and port occupants physically south. That's inside of this planning cycle. We got to figure that out, because to ignore that piece and say we're gonna move 220 hangar owners / occupants, at what cost and to where? And if we're gonna charge them market rate, which would be the expectation, right? Because you now have construction costs that have been incurred, how many are we gonna lose? So is the demand as high as we think it is when we do all those things? We gotta talk that stuff through and pulse it a little bit, because we may lose some current occupants because they don't want to pay those prices.
Math will sort itself out as we work through it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, we'd like to pulse that a little bit, I think. You don't do any of this without demand. The demand is being the demand for hangar space, right? What kind we're talking about, there are different demand levels, but that's first in any expansion. If you don't have sustainable demand for whatever you're building, you don't do it.
The discussion has all been about hangars. Are there other types of development that we would consider?
Well, it has to be aviation.
Yeah,
So, I mean, are you talking the terminal? Or are you talking an
Well,
MRO? Like,
I mean, it could be office space for aviation-related businesses, or it could be, or,
so office spaces would have to be attached to a hangar.
yeah.
You can't just put office spaces out there. And that's kind of the Shelter signature model, right? They have these big hangars and they've got their office spaces on the back. So again, if that's what we decide to build, then absolutely, then we would build a hangar that has the associated office space. Those rent for very high dollars. I think that's a smart business thing.
Do you have a sense of demand for those things as well, right? Like, avionic shops or what, like, are there other, do you have other inquiries that we just can't accommodate right now?
Yes. Daily.
Yeah, so I think what we want to do is inventory all of that and, beyond just,
There are
Stuff
people
in
on
an
the
airplane.
field who are, grown beyond their current, hangar space or office space. And, there are people that, begging me from space in this building. I think your office spaces are all 100% occupied, right?
You looking at me?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, I have two available options right now. That's it.
I just recently, one just recently.
With the hangar, yeah.
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 So-
When we leased out B, there was 4 gone before the building was complete.
So to answer your question, anything aviation related, I have no problem building if it makes sense for the airport. If you were to say, hey, here's this new drone activity that you can be the leading, or electric plane, so we'd have to put the electric chargers and you could be the leading, airport in the country on this, and here's the demand, and here's why we should do it. If it makes sense and everyone kind of says, yeah, that's a brilliant idea, then I'm up for it.
I think the best return is, that area along the runway is the prime aviation space. Anything doing with airplanes, hangars are going to give us our best return. Most people are not going to rent that for office and other areas. Probably farther down into the burb is where they'd be.
Well, the question I had for you is, do you get inquiries for other things that would be kind of, for lack of a better term, equivalent to another Pilatus type of a use, where that's a kind of a major user who would purpose build a specific facility for themselves?
Not the size of Polaris. That's a pretty impressive facility, and they're expanding. They built 2 facilities and they're looking at more. But I get inquiries quite a bit for MROs or, people who want to run a business out of a hangar. So they would have office, they would have maintenance spaces. And most of those are in the 50 to 60,000 square foot hangar thing. So, 6-acre spots. Again, I think if that runway was being built right now, I probably wouldn't be able to leave my office because the line of people who are like, I want X amount of acres to do this, they've been coming in, kind of on a regular stream. And I'm like, come see me in 2024, come see me in 2024. And most of them stay in contact. So I believe there's a strong market for that, those bigger maintenance hangars.
But it's all some kind of a hangar based.
Pretty much.
It's not a more specific a specific type of facility, because I wouldn't consider like Pilatus really a hangar. If they were to leave, that's not just a usable
For the
hangar.
manufacturing.
Right.
I mean, the whole one side of the building is all hangars, so,
Right.
and if those hangars go away, they can't do the thing, so.
Yeah.
I think most of those business models have the hangar so you can work and store your aircraft inside. And then again, there's maintenance spaces and office spaces to sort of hold the staff. But I think Pilatus is kind of a unique, 1 in a million, job or company to have here.
It's been a long time since we've been able to market to that, because until this road moves, we haven't even had
Right.
land
No options, right.
like this in. So it's not something that we're really on the radar for.
So to be respectful of everybody's time, we're already past quitting time. Let's take a week, the board, I'm talking to now, let's take a week, digest this, get some comments back on initial team structure, so that we can get to a meaningful strategic overview meeting, like you were just talking about, David. I think there's some predecessor things we can work on to make that more interesting, meaning we'll bring data that help the discussion rather than just spitball. What are those in your minds? What should we go address first as maybe smaller teams to get to that bigger discussion? And send it to Ben, just so we have one collection point for that. And I think with Jansen and I, we'll get together with Paul to look at that, kind of package it a little bit, send it out to you before the next meeting. So that we say this is kind of our collective view of how to proceed on the next step. And then we can go from there. And if we want to do an interim meeting in between there, if that makes sense, we'll get in contact. But does that sound like a timeline you can work with a little bit? Give you time to work on the thought process here a little bit, get us some information, we'll package it and bring it back to you.
Did you have that?
You're kind of quiet today, Joe. You're making me nervous.
Not that exact thing.
Tony, want to jump in first, then we'll go to Joe for closing remarks.
Is Joe there?
I think something else that, and I haven't heard it mentioned, and that's the long-term vision. What, in 10 years, do we want this airport to look like? What do we want it to be capable of? And then working back from that, what are the outside market conditions that could stand in our way? Because I think I think starting even from tonight is just a multifaceted. Every time you come up with something, there's gonna be, oh, I gotta bring this party here too.
So the 10-year plan is actually a 30-year plan, and it's our strategic business plan. So if anybody in the audience hasn't looked at it, and again, it's, it has to have a market. So I could say, I want all Pilatus, I want a 200-acre Pilatus facility here.
Sure.
May never happen, and then that land sits empty
Yeah,
for, 150
exactly.
years. So we have to go with where the market is and stuff, and I think that kind of talks about what's that feasibility. But we actually do have that sort of 30-year plan of saying, hey, here's what that south side looks like, here's what the airport looks like, going forward. And then we go from there, and I said, you're right, if we spend too much time doing this, we'll all be talking about electric planes and drones.
It's fine, if that's where it's going.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think my first comment when you and I first met was, part of my vision is something to attract people here other than the airport. Facilities on the ground other than the airport to drive people to make it a destination in Jefferson County.
So before Joe does the closing comments, I do want to offer up former board member and a original board member, Jay, has done a bunch of research for the airport in the past. And so if we get to a point where there's sort of data that we need to collect that's beyond the airport's either time allowability or just our expertise, Jay has kindly offered his big brain to do that research for us. So
Thanks, Jay.
as a research fellow for the airport.
Put that on the resume.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're closing argument. So now the reason I was being quiet is just, there's a lot of areas you can throw gas on this fire, so to say. We've talked about, I don't know, like, for example, things like the maintenance facility, and the amount of extra maintenance equipment we'll need, and where that will be, other considerations. I think the one thing that's very comforting is about a year ago, we were all sitting here, and some of the general aviation guys got really fired up about getting pushed out of the airport. I think Ed, you may have been one of them, right?
Wouldn't be me.
But, yeah, where are we going, and no hangers and all this, and I think you guys can see that Paul has more than included that in what this plan is. This is a very aggressive plan to support our general aviation. And so the stark difference between a year ago and some of the, how the hell could you do that today is pretty good. So I'm thankful to see that. That was a good thing. I think that without a doubt, Phil, you brought up what I was sitting here not going to say a word about to our private groups, which is, I think the moving of the current T hangers needs to be first and foremost, because we don't want to leave a loose end out there that we then have to deal with in 5 years or 10 years, and then have different land uses or invited in a different commercial user or something, and then go, where the hell are they going? Where are they going? And then people get left out. So considering them, I think, is important early. And I think as you consider that 15 acres there, it obviously gives us a whole nother project, just because then we get to consider what goes down there. Sure. And that's kind of the sort of the gas on the fire, so to say. So there's certainly a lot to work on. I'm glad we have 6 months to do it, because the project will expand as we think about things like maintenance of that space, the move that's inevitable, and the fair market rate, which I know will piss everybody off, but I'm one of those guys too that I'm paying.
I'm right there with you.
I'm paying a lot more now than, my stuff went through the roof. I have one of the big bigs up there, and that's a lot to be paying. And so it's exciting. I think you've done a great job to set this up, and I think it's really set the airport up well. And now we need to figure a way to keep this place supported. And as you said, way too many airports haven't thought about how they're gonna support themselves in the future. And thankfully, you know, you as the leader here have thought about that, and now we're positioning ourselves well, so.
Awesome.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your participation.
Hey, Ben, would you make a request to clean the camera before next time so I can see you guys?
Thank you for that.
So blurry.
Status of 321, which is our crosswind runway. I have a scoping or a midway meeting, next week with the consultant. And then that report's be coming out in March about their recommendation. So I've been doing.
Still back to the county at that point.
I mean, they ultimately the county says, yeah, you know, I approve what you want to do, Paul, or I don't.
Thank you.
Hey, are you gonna give a public apology to Paul?